As you know, I'm Kainton the Tech Pro, and today I'm going to be telling you about H2 in-memory database. The problem is that if you're an IT professional and you don't know about in-memory databases, then most likely you are lagging behind the technology timeline, because the future of databases and data storage is in-memory database. What is in-memory database? It's a database that is stored in the memory. The reason is because storing database on the disk has the problem of latency and the seek time. That is, the time it takes to retrieve the data is increasing in proportional to the size of the data in the disk. So the new technology now is in-memory database, and that is why SAP have come out with a system called SAP HANA that uses in-memory database. But that is not what we are talking about. We are actually talking about a different in-memory database that is free, that we can actually use now. So I'm going to teach you how to implement an in-memory database, be able to insert, update, delete, and select data from an in-memory database. We are going to be using H2, we are going to be using Spring Framework, and we are going to be using Java programming language. And this is going to be easy. What you need to do is to subscribe to my channel. So click on the subscribe button below to subscribe to my channel, so that if you subscribe, then you kind of motivate me to continue making this lesson for you. Again, I've said if you are using SAP system is really fast because it implements SAP HANA, which is an in-memory database based application or system. So let's implement an in-memory database at this point. Let me show you the console, and this is how the console looks like, and why I prefer H2 to other ones like maybe HSQLDB and some other ones is that H2 gives us a console where we can actually use a user interface to insert data, delete, and update. So let's do it now. Please subscribe and also like my video, because that is one thing I appreciate. Leave me a comment if this video is informative for you. Leave me a comment to let me know that you appreciate this video, and also let me know if you have any challenges in this. Again, this lesson is going to be a procedure-based, step-by-step lesson, so just grab popcorn or maybe something like that so that you can follow along. I don't know how long it will take, but I hope it will be fine. Again, I'd like to apologize for putting on something not very official, because the weather is really hot. I've been out in the field ministry for some time, and now I'm here to make this lesson for you. All right, so let's see the procedure. I actually have this procedure on my website. You can look at the description box, but I'm actually going to be using the Microsoft Word document. The reason is because I like to be marking out or checking out any procedure we follow. I could actually mark it as green. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this document open, and I'm also going to leave Spring Boot open. So this is how I normally do it. So I'm going to leave these two open and clear this console. All right, so you can do the same, follow this procedure, and let's get started. So the first thing, create a startup project and add 3 dependencies: web, JPA, and H2 dependencies. These are the 3 dependencies we need for us to work with H2 in-memory database. So I'm going to go to File and say New and choose Startup Project. Okay, so, and I'm going to call it Spring H2. Give me a second, let me just close up this. So I'm going to call it Spring H2. All right, so I'm going to go group is comes under Genius. Artifact ID is the name, Spring H2. I'm going to go next, and I'm going to now have frequently used dependencies, but if you don't have them, just type H2 at this point, and you can see it comes H2 database. Also choose web, and you can see actually Spring Starter Web, and then the next one is Spring Data JPA. So JPA means Data Java Persistence API that allows you to have method, already existing method, to perform CRUD operation. CRUD means create, read, update, and delete. So I'm going to just click on next and click on finish. All right, so at this point you can see a project is created, Spring H2, and I'm going to now mark this as green. So we've taken the first step. The next step says examine the pom.xml. Pom.xml is the XML file that holds the dependencies and the configuration for your project, and POM means project object module. So if I drop down here, okay, it's still building, but the pom.xml is right here. So I'm going to open it to see what is inside. Actually, should mark this screen. Alright, so examine the pom.xml and it's taking a while. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So at this point, I'd like to show you that this is the data JPA, as you can see, and this is the web dependency, and this is the H2. And you can see scope runtime means that it is in memory. It is residing in the class path and is deployed along with the application package that's built. So I'm going to mark this as green, and the next step says step 3, create a student class in the models package. Now I'm going to just come here and go to src main java, and I'm going to make some room here. I'm going to right click on this existing package, and I'm going to choose new. I'm going to choose class. So the student is the object we are working with because we want to maintain a list of students in this database. So I'm going to put it in the models package by attaching the models at this point, and I'm going to call the name of the class student. Students. Alright, so I'm going to say finish. So this student is going to have ID, name, and department. So let's say int private integer ID, private string name, and private string department. Okay, so these three things have to be there. And the next thing we want to do is to generate the getters and setters and also generate the constructors. So I'm going to just go down and say public. So I'm going to first create an empty constructor. That's the first thing. So the next thing is to create a constructor using this field. So I'm going to just right click and choose source and choose generate. So I'm going to choose source, choose generate constructor using fields, and I'm going to just say generate. Alright, so I don't like seeing this super, so I'm going to delete it. So the next thing, I'm going to generate the getters and the setters. So I'm going to go to source. I'm going to say generate getters and setters, as you can see here. So select everything and just say generate. And I also like to have the toString method, so I'm going to also generate the toString method. So go to source and choose generate toString method. Where are you? Generate toString. Perfect. So I'm going to use everything, generate. So at this point, we have created the student class in the models package. So I'm going to mark this as green as well. The next step says annotate the student's class with @entity annotation, annotate the ID with @ID annotation, and also annotate the ID with @generated_value annotation. Entity annotation tells Spring that this class is an entity, more like it represents a record or a table, or a record in the table. Again, this table will be created automatically for us. We are not going to be creating this table ourselves. That's the beauty of Spring JPA, or the beauty of Spring Framework. So I'm going to annotate this class with @entity, and I'm going to annotate the ID with @ID and @generated_value. Okay, so I'm going to save, and I'm going to press Ctrl+Shift+O. will import all the namespaces needed for these annotations that has been used. So perfectly okay. So I've done step 4. So step 5 says create a student repository interface in the repositories package and make it extend CRUD repository. So what we need is to create student repository. Now repository, a JPA repository is provided by Spring JPA to help us have already existing methods for insert, select, delete, and update without having to write this code. That is why we need a repository. So when we create a repository here, it will extend CRUD repository, which actually extends JPA repository. So that is what we are doing. So I'm going to right click in this place and say new, and I'm going to create this time an interface, and I'm going to call it students So this student repository automatically will provide us with all the methods we need, right? Perfect. Without having to write this code. So student repository, and I'm going to put it in the repositories package. So I'm going to say repositories package, finish. All right. So sometimes you can actually annotate this with at repository, but if you don't, I think it's still fine. So I'm going to say extends crowd repository and save, and then Control-Shift-O. Good. So at this point we are going to add the type of object we want to store, which is student object. And the nice thing is the primary key type. The primary key type is an integer primary key we are using, so I'm going to say integer. Alright. So again, Control-Shift-O to correct everything. Alright, so at this point, I think we are done with this repository. The next thing we want to do is to create a student controller file in the controllers package. Now, what is a controller? A controller is a file that receives requests from the client. So if a user types in something in the browser, it comes to the controller. So we are going to write the controller file. So I'm going to right click here and say new, and say new file. A controller is simply a Java class anyway. So I'm going to call it students controller, and I'm going to place it in a controllers package. So to put it in controllers package, just append the controllers here. All right. So I'm going to annotate this controller with a base mapping of Spring H2. So what it means, if somebody wants to come to use this application, he needs to go to /Spring H2. All right, that is the base mapping. So I'm going to say first we annotate it with at rest controller. Now we are building a REST controller. We actually we are not going to be building HTML documents or using HTML documents, because we are building a REST API. After now, in the next lesson, we are going to build a HTML form to be able to enter data. But for now, we are going to be entering data using a REST interface or a REST application. So at request mapping, of /Spring H2. So I'm going to save everything. I'm going to say Control-Shift-O. All right, so now I've created the student controller file. I want to now annotate with Spring. I've done this, and the next step says enable H2 console data source and URL in the application properties file. H2 console is what I showed you in the beginning. Is a GUI that helps you add, delete data from the database, more like a GUI that helps you manage the database. Everybody likes GUI. GUI makes our work easier. So H2 provides what is called H2 console, that is a GUI for adding, deleting, updating, or for managing your database, even creating new tables. So to do that, I'm going to just copy this, or maybe we can just type it out. So I'm going to go to application properties file, and I'm going to say Spring dots H2 dots. Now this IntelliSense is messing up. Dot console dot enabled is true. The next one is data source dot platform. Data source dot platform is equal to H2, and the last one is the name of our database, or the data source URL. Data source dot URL is equal to jdbc h2 mem, and then the name of the database. Let's call this database student db, student.db. So that's the name of our database. So having done this, let's test it. At this point, we should be able to see the console and see what is happening there. So I'm going to run this application and I'm going to go to the console to see if we can actually see the console. So let me run this application by clicking on this place and choosing Run As and choose Run As Spring Boot app. So to access the control, we simply go to our browser http://localhost 8080 h2 console. So basically, let's see if it works. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So I hope everything went fine. So all right. So let's see. So you can see that Tomcat started on port 8080, as you can see there. Yeah. All right. So we are now going to go to the browser and let's check http localhost port 8080 and h2 console h2 dash console. Boom. So now you can see that this is h2 console. How do I know that this h2 console has to do with my application? You can see that this is the student DB. You can see the name of our database. We can just go ahead to test connection and you can see that the connection test was successful. So that is perfect. So we are making progress. So let's see. The next thing is change the JDBC URL to what you have in your application properties file. We've done this. Click on connect. Notice that the student table is created. Let's see. Actually, this the student table is created. The reason the student table is created here is because we annotated the student class with entity annotation, and that is why the student table is created for us. So if you go ahead to change the name of the class to another class, then it will also create. For instance, if I come to the models let me just create another class and call it teacher. So let's call it teacher. Okay, so this teacher, I am going to annotate it with entity annotation, and I'm going to save, and it needs a primary key, so I'm going to say integer ID, and I'm going to annotate this ID with ID annotation and also as generated value annotation. Okay, Control Shift O. So what I want to check now, of course, we need maybe some constructor public teacher. Okay, so now I'm going to rerun this application and let's see that it will create this object for us, or this teacher table for us in the database. Alright, so let's see if everything starts perfectly well. As you can see, Tomcat started on port 8080. So let's go back to the console. So I'm going to go ahead to refresh it. So to refresh it, I'll simply go here. I can't remember how to refresh, so I'm going to say, I think here is refresh, yeah. So I'm going to connect again, and you can see that we now have another object called teacher. So that is how easy it is for Spring to build a database table for you. You don't have to now be creating columns and putting the data types in there. So now I'm going to mark this as green. Create a separate data.sql file in the resources folder and write a query to insert a couple of records in the database. So now we want to have a few items in the database when this application runs. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a new file. So new file, and I'm going to save, the name is data, just initial data I want to insert into this table. So I'm going to say finish. So I'm going to say insert into students. I think the name of the table is student, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, students, no problem. If insert it student values. and the value ID of 1, let's say kind son, and my department is CS, computer science. I inserted the second record. Okay, let me just copy and paste. Copy and paste, Control V. Okay, so I'm going to close this, and I'm going to close this as well. Put semicolon, put semicolon. So this one is Leander. I'm going to say 2. Okay, so this is computer engineering. Let's change it. So I'm going to run this application again to make sure that these items, they are inserted into the database. So I'm going to just click on refresh or relaunch at this point. So if everything goes fine, we are going to see this data actually inserted into the database. So let's see. So this we have everything started working. So let's go to our. So I'm going to click on this place and I'm going to connect again. This time I'm going to click on student and then run. So students run. So no rows actually. So we have some issues. So okay, so I'm going to stop it. We just check and make sure everything is fine. So good. Insert into students, not students. So I'm going to remove this. So I'm going to save. I'm going to run it again. So right click here and just say run as and choose Spring Boot app. So at this point, hopefully, we will see these records have been inserted into the database. So since it's an in-memory database, we need some initial data to work with. So let's see. So you can see Apache started. So I'm going to refresh. So refresh, connect. So let's see at this point, run. No rows. Run selected, run. Okay, so let's see where this problem is coming from. Okay, I think I placed it in the right place. Okay, so this actually has to be data.sql. So let's see. Let me copy this. So it has to be with extension.sql. So first I'm going to delete it. Delete. So let me create a new file. New file. So let me call it data.sql. I can't remember if I gave it this extension before now. So I'm going to open it. Alright, so open. Okay, so I think I'm having some problem here. Okay, we have this. Okay, so let's stop this application first. Okay, so I have it open, so I'm going to paste and I'm going to save. So I'm going to now relaunch this application. So I'm going to say run as Spring Boot app. Alright, so let's go back to check. So at this point, I'm going to refresh. I'm going to connect and I'm going to go to this place and run. So you can see that the records are inserted there for us. Those records we have. So the key thing is you need to actually save that file as .sql with an extension .sql. Okay, so we've done this. The next step is to refresh the console and check that the initial data is inserted. Auto-wire the student repository into the student controller. So now we want to write some queries at this point. So we are going to auto-wire in the student repository into the student controller. So to do that, we simply create a private member variable of student repository type in here in the controller. Private student repository student repository. All right, so this is fine. So I'm going to auto-wire it so that I'm sure you should be able to understand what it means. So it simply means we are trying to make sure we achieve dependency injection so that we don't have to always be instantiating new objects every time. All right, so I've done this auto-wired. So that is auto-wired, not auto-wired. Okay. Write get all students method in the student controller file. So I'm going to, why do we have? So I'm going to write a method get all students private a list of students get all students. So get all students will simply return a list of all the students we have in this application. So I'm going to simply say student repository. So student repository now provides us a method called find all. That find all helps returns the list of all the items in the repository. Dot find all, but find all is an iterable. So first, let's do Control-Shift-O to make sure that we have all those errors gone. So add a return type. Okay. So we are simply going to return it. So return student repository just find all. Okay. But it's an iterable. Find all returns an iterable. So let's just cast it to a student, to list of students, because this type is list of students. So I'm going to cast it to list of students. At this point, I'm also going to just write another function that says get student by ID that is going to return a student by the given ID. So again, it actually should be public. All right, so public students get students by ID, and it's going to take an integer ID. All right, and it's going to return student repository dot find by ID. If I think it's going to be there, return students repository dot find by ID, and it takes the passing ID. Okay, so at this point we need a request mapping that is going to actually say what function to run when a request comes in. When a request comes in to /students, it means we need a get mapping, because request mapping method is equal to get. So that means get mapping. Before now, we say request mapping method equal to get, request mapping method is equal to post, and so on. But now it's easier to just say get mapping, post mapping, and then you don't have to be specifying the method attribute in there. So I'm going to say at get mapping. So get mapping for all students. If I just go to /student, I should be able to get list of students. And in this case, if I go to /students /ID, I'm enclosing it in curly braces because it's a variable that is going to be changing. All right, so Control-Shift-O to correct all this. This optional, fine, okay, to handle null values. So the next thing we want to do is to tell for student get student by ID, we need to tell this function that this ID is coming from the path variable. So just annotate it with a path variable, and the name of the path variable is simply ID. Alright, so at this time I really want to test my application, so I'm going to save, I'm going to relaunch it by clicking on this place, and I'll simply go to the browser and visit these URLs and see if it's going to give me first a list of students. When I visit slash spring k2 slash students, then I go to spring k2 slash students slash an ID, and I want it to return me a list of students and also a single student respectively. So I'm going to come here. Because it's a REST API, I actually know that the data is there, but we want to get it from a REST by making a REST call through, using a resource-based URL. So I'm going to say HTTP the localhost 8080 H2 console. I can't remember, but I think it's Spring H2 slash students, and it gives me a list of students. And now let me try to do slash students slash a particular ID of 2, and it gives me that particular ID. So at this point we've actually pretty much done up to this place. So I'm now going to do a bonus, which is add, update, and delete method. So we actually do add, update, and delete. So let's quickly do it before I round up. So at this time it's going to be post mapping. So I'm going to say post. So post mapping is going to be inserting students into the list of students. So that is where we are going to be posting students into the list of students. So I'm going to say public void. After posting, inserting, we don't need anything to come back. We are not returning anything. So I'm going to say add students. Add student is going to take a student object, so it's going to be students. Okay, and it's simply going to why am I typing so rough? So I'm going to simply say the repository will provide us a method to save. So I'm going to say students repository.save, and it's going to save students. Alright, so that is fine. So at this time I'm going to actually copy this and paste and use it to do I'm going to use it to do updates. So Control V. Again, we are talking about this is post mapping, and the next one is put mapping, put for update, and this time we are going to say update student. That will be the name of this function, update student. And we need the ID of the student to update, and also the student record to use to update that student. So it actually will need two variables, right? So integer ID and student. So put mapping. All right. So normally I like to break down this line into two. Now the ID of the student to update will be coming from the path variable, because if you want to make an update, you simply go to slash the ID you want to update. But the student the data you are updating will be coming from the form. You are editing a form and then sending it by clicking submit. But since you are doing a REST API, we are going to specify that the student's data that is to be updated, the updates we are going to push is coming from the request body. The request body contains the form data. So the ID comes from the path variable, so say we annotate it with a path variable of ID, and the student record comes from the request body. All right, so I think we are making progress. So this is about updates. So this is put mapping, update student, and finally delete. So let's say delete. So at delete mapping, you guessed right, is going to delete. Again, put mapping is going to take an ID, so I'm going to say ID. Delete mapping is going to also take an ID, so it's going to say students slash ID. Alright, so now the next thing we want to do is to simply delete the student with a given ID. So add delete mapping. What am I doing here? Alright, so we need the name of the function. So public, after deleting, we are not returning anything. Public void delete students, and it's going to be integer ID. Alright, so at this point we are just simply going to also try to ask the repository to help us delete the student. So I'm going to say students repository.delete, and it's actually delete by ID, because what we have is the ID dot delete by ID, and it takes the ID to delete. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I think we are pretty much done with this. Now we are going to test it. We already have tested 2 items. So now to test it, we can use a browser to actually test it, because we have not built a user interface. We are going to do that in the next tutorial after now. So let's use REST clients. So I have advanced REST clients, which I already installed. Advanced REST client is a free plugin to Google Chrome that you can use to do you can use it to do what is called REST operations, REST requests and responses here. I'm going to just click on send because I already have this here, but I'm not sure this application is running. So let's go ahead to click to relaunch this application. So I'm going to relaunch. Alright, so now I'm relaunching it and hopefully everything starts fine. Okay, good. So I'm going to come here. If I say, now we are not doing posts, I'm going to say get. I'm going to say get. So it gives me the students in the database, and I'm going to, now I actually want to insert a student record. So let me just take this request body. I'm going to copy it. So I want to post a student, and to post, we are going to post it to this URL, but we need a request body at this time. I'm going to say v. So I'm going to use ID of 3. So I'm going to just change the name a bit. Alright, so let's try to send it. Boom. So it doesn't go. Primary key. Okay, so let's. I think I've encountered this problem before. Alright, so I'm going to send it again. Olienda, computer engineering SQL. Okay, yeah, we have an error here. So send. Okay, so everything went perfectly fine. So let me send another one, this time with an ID of 4. So I'm going to change the name to Kali. And Kali is actually an economist. Okay, so post is working. So let's go ahead to do a get. So you can see that we have 4 items here, but now we have null to be the name, and that is not good. Not good at all. Not good. So let's see. I think I made a mistake. So let's see. Meanwhile, let me try to do puts. Let's try to update record 3. Record 3. Go to or record 4. Let's try to update record 4. And let me send. It worked fine. Let's update record 3. So let's do a get and see if the update actually worked. So the update works, but post actually did not work. So let's go back to application to see where we are having problems. So we have that. So this is where we see. So now we have post mapping. We need to specify at request body to show that the student record is coming from the request body. So that is where we have issues. So I'm going to refresh it and I'm going to relaunch it again. Alright, so having relaunched it, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to send two records, okay, initial records. So I'm going to go to post, I'm going to go to body. So I'm going to send these post requests. Posts of /student. So what's happening? Okay, maybe it's this application was still trying to execute. So 5, okay. So let's now check and see if it inserted correctly. So I'm going to go get. So it inserted everything, as you can see right here. Let's now go to the H2 console to check and see what is happening out there. H2 console, let's see. H2 console, where are you? Okay, yeah, here. So I'm going to go to H2 console, I'm going to refresh, I'm going to connect, I'm going to come here, click and run, so you can see that 4 records are right there in the database. Now, I have some questions that are left to be answered. One, I've not followed the best practices. I needed a service layer. I'm going to do that in the next class after now. I also will not continue to be using REST API. I need to use a form to enter this data. So we need to actually fill a HTML form and click submit, and it submits the data into the H2 database. So these are the things we want to do. Now we are going to stop here and then continue in the next lesson because I'm a bit tired, and I also want to write out this procedure for you to follow. Again, remember to subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button below this video right now, and also leave me a comment. Tell me that this video has been informative for you. Tell me I'm doing well, because that motivates me. And also, if there are some friends that will benefit from this video, please share it around your social network profile, and we'll see you in the next lesson.